Adam, our dumb little weasel f***ing b***less dog, was summoned to his bad supervisor Harper Song's office because he had failed to complete a report. Harper looked absolutely furious as he repeatedly apologized, but she made it clear that she wanted an explanation rather than an apology. Adam admitted that he had simply forgotten to finish the report. Harper sternly pointed out that he was acting as if forgetting something was a valid excuse for not doing his job properly. She reminded him that he had already been working at the company for 4 months, yet he was still performing no better than an intern. She criticized him for making the same mistakes repeatedly and continued scolding him without holding back. While enduring her harsh lecture, Adam reflected on his unfortunate circumstances. Although he had graduated from a prestigious university with excellent grades, he had been unable to find a job for 2 years. Under constant pressure from his parents to accept any position available, he had eventually joined this company. He bitterly thought that it had simply been his bad luck. He had even turned down an interview with a much larger company just to accept this miserable job, and now he had no idea what he was supposed to do with his life. Harper eventually threw the report onto his desk, with a few pages striking him in the face, and ordered him to redo the entire report by Monday. Adam quietly acknowledged her instructions before leaving the office. After returning to his cubicle, he found one of his colleagues waiting for him. She immediately apologized and admitted that he probably would not have made those mistakes if he had not spent so much time helping her with her own workload a few days earlier. She sincerely expressed how guilty she felt about the situation. However, Adam silently disagreed with her apology. He thought that, if she truly felt sorry, she should have completed her own work properly in the first place. He had only helped her because he did not want both of them to get scolded due to her poor performance. In the end, he was the one who was being criticized for making mistakes in his own assignments as well. Despite his true feelings, Adam politely assured her that there was no need to apologize and insisted that he had not really helped her very much. She immediately denied that statement, insisting that he had been an enormous help. She explained that she had been in serious trouble that day and that Harper would certainly have reprimanded her if Adam had not stepped in to assist her. Since he was always willing to help whenever she needed it, she wanted to return the favor. She then shyly asked whether it would be all right if she treated him to dinner. Adam immediately stood up and declined her invitation, explaining that he already had plans. Although she looked slightly disappointed, she simply accepted his answer. After leaving the office, Adam walked home, while thinking that perhaps she had failed to understand the hint. He had no intention of encouraging her feelings or allowing her to take advantage of his kindness. As he stepped into the elevator, he received a message from Harper. Seeing her name on the screen instantly made him sigh. He reflected that it had already been a terrible day, and now even his carefully planned weekend seemed destined to become exhausting. During the weekend, Adam met Harper Song as planned. The moment they met, she immediately scolded him once again because he had arrived 5 minutes late. Adam silently complained that the delay had only been caused by the subway. Ignoring his excuse, Harper simply instructed him to follow her. The two of them first stopped to take several selfies together before entering a nearby cafe. While looking through the photos, Harper remarked that he should have smiled more warmly so they would actually look like a couple in love. Meanwhile, Adam quietly thought that none of those photographs could possibly be sent to his parents because they looked completely unnatural. As he reflected on his current situation, he realized how ridiculous everything had become. He was now pretending to be in a fake relationship with his own supervisor, and it had all started because his parents constantly pressured him to find a girlfriend after he finally secured a job. He remembered telling his friends in their group chat that he had finally found employment. Shortly afterward, his parents had immediately begun urging him to start dating. One of his friends then suggested introducing him to a woman who happened to be facing exactly the same problem. She also needed someone to pretend to be her boyfriend in order to satisfy her parents. Thinking it sounded like a practical solution, Adam agreed to meet her. The following day, he arrived at the cafe for their first meeting, only to discover that the woman was none other than Harper Song. As they sat across from each other, Adam silently regretted not asking for a photograph beforehand. Harper also looked noticeably embarrassed and admitted that she had run out of people she could ask for such a favor. Adam privately assumed that her demanding personality was probably the reason no man wanted to date her. At the same time, he worried that his parents would surely question him about whether he had managed to arrange a second date. Harper then directly asked whether he would be willing to become her fake boyfriend. She explained that all she needed was for him to play the role convincingly. Since both of them were only trying to satisfy their parents, there was no reason to treat the relationship as anything more than an arrangement. She wanted to focus entirely on her career, but her parents constantly interfered by pressuring her to date. Therefore, they only needed to meet occasionally, take a few convincing photographs together, and send them to their parents as proof that they were happily dating. Since the relationship was fake from the beginning, neither of them would have to worry about breakups or any emotional complications. After explaining everything, she asked for Adam's opinion. Adam considered her proposal carefully. Although he found her personality rather intimidating, he admitted that she was undeniably beautiful and incredibly capable, having already become a team leader at such a young age. His parents would undoubtedly approve of someone like her. Personally, he knew he would never date her seriously, but pretending to be her boyfriend seemed manageable. Therefore, he agreed and told her that the arrangement sounded acceptable. Back in the present, Adam returned to the office, where Harper was already waiting for him. Looking at him, she commented that it was a pleasure to see him looking so energetic, and said that, since he appeared ready to work, she would not go easy on him. Adam silently thought that his exhaustion was entirely her fault. He immediately apologized, but Harper ignored it and instead asked whether he had finished correcting the report she had assigned him the previous Friday. Adam quickly replied that he would retrieve it immediately before hurrying back to his cubicle. As he searched through the files on his computer, he reflected on how exhausting it was to return to work without having been able to rest during the weekend. He had originally believed that the fake relationship would simply require them to meet occasionally and take a few photographs together. Instead, Harper had insisted that he carefully plan entire dates so that their stories, schedules, photographs, and social media updates would all match perfectly. Every plan he created was torn apart by her endless criticism. If his ideas were truly that terrible, he thought she could have simply planned everything herself. Instead, he had been forced to listen to her endless complaints throughout the entire weekend. Had he known the arrangement would become this demanding, he never would have agreed in the first place. While searching for the completed report on his computer, another employee approached his desk. Adam politely asked whether she needed something. She noticed that he looked unusually exhausted and commented that he seemed to be having a terrible day. She kindly told him that she would be happy to treat him to a meal if he wanted some company. To her surprise, Adam immediately accepted her offer. She looked slightly startled before asking whether there was anywhere in particular he wanted to eat. Adam replied that he was craving sushi and wondered if she knew any good sushi restaurants near the office. As they prepared to leave together, Adam reflected that her name was Dana Jin. By the following day, the two of them would unexpectedly end up at a motel to participate in a boxing round. The next morning, Adam arrived at the office looking noticeably exhausted. As he slowly settled into his seat, he could not help reflecting on everything that had happened after work. He never would have imagined that he would actually go through with the sparring session alongside Dana the previous evening. Before they had parted ways, he had repeatedly asked her not to tell any of their coworkers or even any of her friends about what had happened. Much to his surprise, Dana had agreed without questioning him or teasing him about it, promising that she would keep everything completely confidential. Thinking about it now, Adam quietly admitted to himself that he had never expected her to agree so easily to his request. As he sat at his desk trying to organize his thoughts, Dana happened to be sitting right beside him. Every few moments, he could feel her glancing in his direction. Whenever he accidentally looked up, he found her already looking at him, which only made him feel increasingly embarrassed. He immediately looked away each time, pretending to focus on his work, but it only made the awkwardness worse. Noticing his uncomfortable expression, Dana leaned slightly closer and quietly commented that it did not seem like anyone at the office had started teasing them yet. Her tone was light-hearted, but Adam felt even more embarrassed after hearing her remark. Rather than replying, he immediately stood up from his chair and awkwardly announced that he was going outside to get some fresh air. As he walked through the office, he silently reflected that he had honestly believed everything had ended after the previous night's training session. Instead, the situation had somehow become even more irritating. He simply could not understand why he had to keep dealing with Dana again when he was already mentally and physically exhausted because of everything that had happened between them the night before. After sitting alone for a short while in an attempt to clear his mind, Harper Song suddenly approached him. Looking at him with her usual strict expression, she sarcastically remarked that he seemed to have plenty of free time on his hands since he still had not submitted the report she had asked him to complete. As she looked at him more carefully, she immediately noticed how tired he appeared. She then asked why he looked so exhausted. Adam honestly admitted that he had been unable to sleep at all the previous night. Harper responded without showing any sympathy. She told him that this was exactly why he needed to finish all of his work during office hours instead of allowing it to pile up. She then asked whether he was seriously planning to spend another entire night working. Adam simply apologized without offering any further explanation. At the same time, he silently thought that staying awake the previous night had absolutely nothing to do with work. Without wasting any time, Harper suddenly changed the subject and asked whether he had already finished preparing the itinerary for their next date. The question caught Adam completely off guard. He immediately thought that he had not even begun planning it yet. It was only Tuesday, and he genuinely could not understand why she was already asking about a date that was not scheduled until Saturday. Even though he was completely unprepared, he politely assured her that he would start planning everything later that day. Deep inside, however, he was thinking that after spending an entire night without sleep, all he wanted was to stay home and finally get some proper rest during the upcoming weekend. To his surprise, Harper calmly replied that there was still plenty of time before the weekend arrived. She even mentioned that she had already found a nice restaurant near the place they were planning to visit and thought it would fit perfectly into their schedule. After hesitating for a moment, Adam carefully asked whether it would be possible to postpone their date to another day. Harper looked at him with a puzzled expression, clearly surprised by the unexpected request. The moment he saw her reaction, Adam immediately assumed that she was going to refuse. However, contrary to his expectations, Harper simply nodded and agreed without arguing. She then handed him a bottled drink before calmly explaining that she was not nearly as unreasonable or selfish as he seemed to believe. She assured him that she would never force someone to go on a date against their own wishes. She admitted that she had criticized his previous date plans only because they had honestly been poorly organized. She then told him that he simply needed to let her know whenever he became free again. Before walking away, she gently reminded him to take better care of himself. Adam watched her leave while silently wondering whether she had suddenly decided to pretend to be kind. Her unexpected response was so different from her usual attitude that he found it difficult to believe. By the time the workday finally came to an end, Adam packed up his belongings and prepared to head home. As he walked toward the elevator, he reflected that this would be the very first weekend he would actually be able to rest ever since he and Harper had begun their fake relationship. Ever since agreeing to their arrangement, he had spent almost every weekend going out with her. Not only had he been forced to accompany her on countless fake dates, but he had also been responsible for planning every single outing. Constantly coming up with convincing date courses had become an exhausting task, leaving him mentally drained week after week. Just as the elevator doors opened, Dana Jin stepped inside and ended up standing beside him. Adam looked at her and politely asked whether she needed something. Dana smiled before asking whether he happened to be free that weekend. The moment he heard her question, Adam immediately thought to himself that, no matter what happened, he absolutely refused to leave his house during the upcoming weekend. All he wanted was to stay home, sleep for as long as possible, and recover from the exhausting week he had just endured. Before he could answer, Dana explained that she was asking because they had not been able to have dinner together after their training session the previous evening. Meanwhile, Adam quietly remembered that he still had to prepare the itinerary for his next fake date with Harper, making the thought of another outing feel even more exhausting. Dana then cheerfully told him that she already had a wonderful restaurant in mind and would love to take him there. After thinking about it for a few moments, Adam replied that he would consider accepting the invitation, but only if she was the one responsible for planning everything. Dana looked genuinely surprised by his response before letting out a small laugh. She commented that she found it amusing that he was still referring to their outing as a date, adding that she actually liked hearing him call it that. Feeling slightly embarrassed by her reaction, Adam simply replied that he would do his best. Finally, the weekend arrived. Adam stood alone on a quiet street, patiently waiting for Dana at their agreed meeting place. Although he had originally planned to spend the weekend resting at home, things had somehow turned out differently once again. A short while later, Dana finally appeared. She was dressed in a beautiful outfit that suited her perfectly, making her look much more elegant than she usually did at the office. The moment she spotted Adam already waiting there, she looked slightly surprised and somewhat confused. Walking over to him with an apologetic smile, she asked whether he had been waiting for her for a very long time. Dana showed up wearing a beautiful outfit, and as soon as he saw her, he quietly took her hand before following her wherever she was leading him. She reminded him that the movie was about to start, while he silently found himself thinking that he had always believed a girl would naturally be much better at planning a date than he ever could. However, he had already begun having doubts the moment she had chosen that particular type of movie. In his opinion, they would simply end up wasting their time because they would not even be able to take any memorable pictures together. He could already imagine Harper giving him an earful if she ever found out that he had spent his time on such a date without bringing back any photographs. His thoughts then drifted toward Dana's appearance. Before meeting her, he had honestly expected her to dress the same way she normally did whenever she came to work, so seeing her wearing such a different outfit had completely caught him off guard. The clothes she had chosen looked far more fashionable and elegant than he had anticipated. A little later, after she came out of the public changing room wearing another outfit, she walked over to him and asked for his opinion about how she looked. After looking at her carefully for a moment, he admitted that she looked much better now than before. His answer immediately made her feel pleased, and the satisfied expression on her face showed that his compliment had left quite an impression on her. After that, the two of them continued spending time together, while he quietly reflected that he really had no one else to blame except himself. He thought that he should never have expected something more polished or romantic from someone who had absolutely no dating experience. The entire situation felt rather awkward and strange to him, but instead of complaining about it, he decided that the best thing he could do was simply humor her a little, go along with whatever happened, and let the date come to an end naturally. After walking around together for a while, he pointed out that they had already missed the movie and wondered what they should do next. Hearing that, Dana immediately asked whether he already had another destination in mind. He answered that it was not supposed to be his responsibility to plan the date because she had been the one arranging everything from the beginning. She then explained that she no longer thought he would actually enjoy following the plan she had originally prepared. Instead, she said that she would much rather take him somewhere that he himself would enjoy, so that the rest of the date would be more comfortable for him. Her response surprised him for a brief moment because he had not expected her to consider his feelings that much. As he thought about what she had just said, he suddenly remembered that she had mentioned a particular restaurant earlier. Realizing that it had probably been the place she had wanted to visit all along, he asked whether she would like to go there and have something to eat instead. She agreed, and before long, the two of them found themselves sitting together inside the restaurant. Dana looked genuinely happy as she enjoyed the meal, and while eating, she enthusiastically explained that she had always wanted to try the food served there, but had never been able to because the restaurant did not accept customers who came alone. She continued explaining that although many restaurants charge similar prices, most of them served frozen meat instead of fresh meat. However, that restaurant always prepared fresh meat for its customers, and even the side dishes were carefully selected to match the quality of the main course. Listening to her speak so passionately about the food, he quietly observed that she could probably have eaten enough for 2 people by herself. Even so, after finishing so much meat, he assumed that she was finally feeling full. A little later, she picked up her milkshake and, while holding it in her hand, asked whether he wanted to taste it. He politely declined her offer, but instead of putting the drink down, she happily continued talking about it. She explained that it was the shop's special seasonal drink that was only available for a limited period and that customers could only enjoy it while the promotion lasted. After that, she enthusiastically began introducing him to the other seasonal drinks the shop offered, describing each one with obvious excitement. As he listened to her, he quietly reflected that spending money on a nice meal like this was actually much more worthwhile than constantly worrying about complicated date plans. He concluded that for their future dates, he no longer needed to stress over finding exciting places to visit or interesting activities to do. Simply choosing a good restaurant where they could sit together, enjoy delicious food, and spend time talking would already be enough. He also realized that dates like these would allow him to return home much earlier without exhausting himself. Once they had both finished their drinks, he suggested that it was probably time for them to head home. Dana looked genuinely surprised by his suggestion and asked whether it was not still too early for them to end the date and go back. Rather than returning immediately, she proposed that the two of them should do their close combat battle together instead. As a result, the two of them eventually returned to the motel once again, where they began sparring together. The next morning at the office, he walked into Harper Song's office with the completed report in his hands. After finishing her review, she looked up at him and calmly remarked that this was exactly the kind of report he should have submitted from the very beginning. She told him that the quality of the report was finally acceptable and instructed him to go ahead and submit it officially. Hearing those words, he simply acknowledged her instructions, replied that he understood, and then left her office to complete the submission. As he walked back toward his own cabin, he could not help feeling relieved that the meeting had ended so peacefully. When he returned to his cabin, Dana smiled before commenting that it was probably the very first time Harper had approved his work without getting angry or scolding him. She found the situation rather surprising because Harper usually pointed out every small mistake before allowing him to leave her office. Hearing Dana's observation, he smiled slightly and jokingly replied that it was probably because she no longer needed him to spend so much time helping her with her own work. Since she had become capable of handling everything by herself, he had finally been able to devote all of his attention to his own assignments instead. Dana immediately shook her head and insisted that his explanation was completely wrong. She explained that none of that would have been possible if he had not patiently taught her everything she needed to know. According to her, she had only been able to complete her work independently because he had guided her step by step until she understood every part of the job. He told her that he had only shown her the basics and explained the workflow, while she had been the one who had learned everything so quickly. He admitted that he had honestly never expected her to improve at such an incredible pace, nor had he imagined that she would become capable of working completely on her own within such a short period of time. After their conversation ended, he quietly reflected on everything that had happened over the past few weeks. He realized that he was genuinely surprised by how much things had changed. Looking back, he thought that perhaps he should have trusted Dana from the very beginning instead of assuming she would continue depending on him. Now that she was handling her own responsibilities without needing constant guidance, he had finally been able to focus entirely on his own work. Because of that, he had completed his assignments without making careless mistakes, and for the first time in a long while, he had managed to avoid another harsh lecture from Harper. Feeling genuinely happy about the improvement, Dana cheerfully suggested that the two of them should celebrate the occasion by going out for dinner that evening. However, he apologized and explained that he would not be able to join her because he already had another appointment scheduled for later that day. Although Dana looked slightly disappointed, she accepted his explanation without arguing any further. Not long afterward, his phone suddenly vibrated with a new message. When he checked it, he saw that Harper had asked him to come downstairs. Without wasting any time, he left the office building and met her outside. Soon afterward, the two of them headed to a restaurant together. After they had settled down and their meal had been served, he casually mentioned that he had actually thought having dinner together during the week had been a pretty good idea. Harper calmly agreed, saying that the arrangement was not bad at all because it allowed them to meet on weekdays while leaving both of them free to rest during the weekends. She added that it was a practical schedule and suggested that they should consider doing something similar again from time to time. Hearing her say that made him quietly wonder whether this would be a good opportunity to ask if she wanted to go somewhere different for their next date instead of always following the original plan. Before he could gather enough courage to ask, Harper looked at him and casually asked whether that was the end of the itinerary he had prepared for the evening. He honestly admitted that it was. Rather than criticizing him for the lack of planning, she simply smiled and said that there was somewhere she wanted to visit before going home. She asked him to follow her, and without asking any questions, he quietly accompanied her. After leaving the restaurant, the two of them eventually arrived at a crockery store. As soon as they stepped inside, Harper called him over and asked him to come closer. Watching her examine the shelves filled with cups, plates, and other kitchenware, he quietly assumed that she had probably come there to buy herself a mug. Instead, she began showing him several different cups and asked for his opinion on which one looked better. He carefully looked at each design, but to him, most of them appeared almost identical. Even so, he did his best to compare them before finally choosing one that seemed slightly nicer than the others. After hearing his opinion, Harper smiled before picking up not one but two matching cups and taking them to the cashier. Watching her purchase both of them left him feeling rather confused, and he silently wondered why she had decided to buy two identical cups instead of just one. His confusion disappeared a few moments later when Harper handed one of the neatly wrapped packages directly to him. She calmly explained that she had already known he would not remember the date himself, so she had prepared a small gift for the third month of their relationship. She reminded him that although their relationship only existed for appearances and was completely fake, she still thought matching cups were an appropriate gift, because they were practical and meaningful enough for the occasion. Receiving such an unexpected present left him genuinely surprised. He sincerely thanked her and admitted that he truly appreciated both the gift and the thought she had put into preparing it. Harper then lightly teased him by saying that he should at least save important dates in his calendar application, because he was unbelievably clueless whenever it came to remembering anniversaries or similar occasions. Her words made him suddenly realize that 3 entire months had already passed without him even noticing. He silently blamed himself for never once thinking about celebrating their monthly anniversary or preparing any kind of gift in return. Still curious, he asked whether she had chosen those particular cups for any specific reason. Harper casually replied that there was no hidden meaning behind the choice. She simply thought they were practical enough to be used every day while also looking nice enough to display. Satisfied with her explanation, he replied that he had only been curious. Harper then pointed out something she had recently noticed about him. She mentioned that he used to answer almost everything she said with nothing more than a simple okay. Recently, however, he had started asking about the things she liked, the restaurants she preferred, and many of her personal preferences. She teasingly remarked that it almost seemed as though someone had advised him to start paying more attention to those details. Hearing her observation completely caught him off guard because she had accurately noticed the recent change in his behavior. Before he could even think of an explanation, Harper unexpectedly asked whether he had found another girl. The sudden question completely stunned him, leaving him speechless for several seconds. Just as he was about to answer, one of the store employees politely approached them and informed them that it was closing time. With no opportunity to continue the conversation, the two of them quietly left the store together. As they walked outside, he could not stop thinking about Harper's question. He silently regretted allowing the perfect opportunity to slip away. He felt that her question had completely caught him by surprise, and that he should have responded immediately, instead of standing there without saying anything. While he was still thinking about it, Harper suddenly asked whether he would like to grab a drink before heading home. Although he hesitated for a brief moment, he eventually accepted her invitation. A short while later, the two of them were sitting together inside a bar. Looking around the bar, he admitted that he had honestly never expected Harper to invite him out for drinks. Harper calmly replied that there was nothing wrong with occasionally relaxing after work. He then mentioned that during every company dinner she rarely drank any alcohol, so he had always assumed that she simply was not interested in drinking. Harper admitted that his assumption had been correct. She explained that she normally drank very little, but tonight she was drinking considerably more than usual because she was still waiting for him to answer the question she had asked inside the crockery store. Hearing that, he finally decided to answer honestly. The more time they spent together, the more he realized how little he actually knew about her. That realization had made him feel uncomfortable because he believed he should at least know her favorite foods, restaurants, hobbies, and personal preferences. Harper quietly listened to his explanation before asking whether he had really needed so much time just to say something that simple. She then smiled faintly and told him that if he ever found himself a real girlfriend, he would have to let her know immediately because their fake relationship would naturally come to an end at that point. She explained that he had only agreed to pretend to be her boyfriend because she had requested it, so it would only be fair to end the arrangement once he entered a genuine relationship. She then teasingly asked whether he had actually been planning to date another woman while continuing to pretend to be her boyfriend at the same time. He immediately denied such an idea, explaining that something like that had honestly never even crossed his mind. After calming down, he asked whether she herself had any intention of finding a real boyfriend. Harper quietly shook her head and replied that she had no plans to do that anytime soon. She admitted that this was exactly why she had entered into a fake relationship with him in the first place. As the drinks continued, Harper gradually began talking more openly about her personal life than ever before. She confessed that ever since her older brother had gotten married, her parents had constantly been asking when she planned to get married as well, and when she intended to give them grandchildren. She admitted that those endless questions had become extremely frustrating because everyone acted as though marriage and raising children were simple things. She confessed that she could barely manage her own daily life, so the idea of taking care of children felt completely overwhelming to her. Thinking about those constant expectations only made her feel irritated and embarrassed. As he quietly listened to everything she revealed, he realized that this was the very first time she had ever spoken so honestly about herself during one of their dates. After sharing her own thoughts, Harper shifted the conversation toward him and began asking questions about his personal life instead. At first, he believed there was nothing particularly interesting about himself to talk about. However, after thinking quietly for a moment, he finally decided to open up. He reminded her that she had been the one who said they should learn more about each other's preferences, so he supposed it was finally his turn to start telling her whatever she wanted to know about him. Meanwhile, back at the home, Dana continued sending him message after message regarding the work report. The more time passed without hearing from him, the more desperate she became to meet him again, and throughout the entire evening, he remained constantly on her mind. The next morning, Adam arrived at the office as usual. After entering the building, he greeted Harper before quietly making his way to his cabin. As he settled into his seat and looked in Harper's direction, he could not help observing that she did not look tired in the slightest. Considering how much she had drunk the previous night, he had expected her to appear exhausted or at least somewhat affected by it. Instead, she looked as composed, energetic, and professional as ever, as though nothing unusual had happened the night before. Her calm demeanor left him genuinely surprised. Watching her work so normally caused him to recall every conversation they had shared during their time together the previous evening. His mind replayed those memories one after another, and he found himself thinking that he had always believed Harper was an extremely persistent person who enjoyed getting on other people's nerves whenever she had the opportunity. However, after spending time with her outside of work, he realized that she was not nearly as unbearable or intimidating as he had always imagined. Although she could still be strict and demanding in the office, there seemed to be another side of her that he had never noticed before. While he was still lost in those thoughts, Dana suddenly walked into his cabin once again. The moment he noticed her, he pointed out that she was late. Dana immediately apologized before explaining that she had stayed up watching a movie before going to bed the previous night. She enthusiastically began telling him that it had been a multiverse movie produced by a company that was well known for creating disturbing independent films. She continued describing the plot, the strange scenes, the characters, and all the unusual concepts that had appeared throughout the movie, speaking with obvious excitement as though she wanted him to share her interest. Throughout her explanation, Adam simply listened with a calm expression, appearing completely unbothered and showing very little reaction to any of the details she was excitedly mentioning. Before Dana could continue talking any further, Harper interrupted both of them from nearby. She reminded them that the office was not the place for casual conversations and instructed them to stop chatting during working hours. She then assigned them a task, telling both Adam and Dana to go to the supply room and carefully check all of the office supplies. Without arguing, both of them agreed to her instructions and immediately headed toward the supply room together. After arriving there, Adam began inspecting the shelves and carefully writing down every item that was stored inside while keeping track of the inventory. Dana remained beside him as he worked. After quietly watching him for a while, she casually asked whether he had been busy the previous night. Adam paused for a moment before replying that it sounded as though she actually had something she wanted to ask. He remarked that she seemed to have something on her mind and encouraged her to simply say whatever she wanted instead of beating around the bush. Dana admitted that she had only been wondering whether he had done anything special after work. Adam answered honestly that he had probably just eaten dinner before spending the rest of the evening resting, just as he usually did. He then asked what she had done after leaving. Dana smiled before saying that she had done exactly the same thing. She jokingly added that she had eaten, rested, and spent her time thinking about him. She then admitted that she kept remembering the close combat battle they had done together previously. She explained that while watching the movie the previous night, there had been a training scene that reminded her of their own boxing routine together. According to her, instead of remembering anything else from the movie, the only thing that stayed in her mind was him. She then curiously asked Adam what he honestly thought about her competitive one-on-one fight. Adam answered that, just as he had told her before, she had a very attractive body because she consistently participated in many boxing rounds and maintained her fitness through all of the sparring. Hearing such a direct compliment immediately caught Dana off guard. She admitted that hearing him praise her body made her suddenly feel very hot and embarrassed. Realizing that the atmosphere inside the supply room had become increasingly awkward, Adam suggested that they should hurry up, finish checking the supplies, and leave the room as soon as possible. Dana quickly became flustered before awkwardly explaining that she had never intended for things to become so embarrassing. She clarified that she had not meant to make the situation uncomfortable like the previous night. Adam then explained that simply because he had complimented her body did not mean he wanted to perform another technical sparring sesh with her right there in the supply room. However, Dana continued insisting over and over again. No matter how many times Adam hesitated, she continued persuading him until he eventually gave up resisting. Unable to refuse her persistent requests any longer, he finally agreed to perform another competitive one-on-one fight with her. After they finished their private 1v1 fight, Adam stepped outside the supply room and remained there waiting for Dana to finish getting herself together before they returned to work. While standing alone in the hallway, he reflected on what had just happened and thought that exercising inside the supply room had been an extremely dangerous idea. If anyone had walked in or happened to see them at the wrong moment, the entire situation could easily have been misunderstood and created unnecessary rumors throughout the office. As he continued waiting outside, Harper's song unexpectedly appeared. Looking at him, she asked whether he had finished counting all of the supplies inside the storage room. Adam calmly replied that he had already completed the inventory and was now simply waiting for Dana to finish up her work before they both returned. Harper nodded before mentioning that perhaps she should wait until Dana came back because she wanted to share some important news with both of them at the same time. Curious about what she meant, Adam immediately asked what the news was. Harper explained that 2 new recruits would officially be joining the office starting the following day. Hearing that announcement surprised Adam, and he admitted that he had not realized the company was currently short-staffed. Harper explained that the decision had come directly from upper management, just as similar decisions always did. She further explained that Kim would officially be responsible for managing the new employees. However, because Kim was already extremely busy with other responsibilities, she wanted Adam and Dana to teach the newcomers all of the basic tasks and help them become familiar with their work. Adam looked somewhat doubtful before asking whether Harper truly believed Dana was capable of training new employees. Harper immediately answered that if Adam himself was capable of doing it, then Dana certainly could as well. She pointed out that Adam was not exactly someone overflowing with confidence either. She then jokingly remarked that she herself would probably be much more confident too if she were capable of handling the workload of 2 different people almost entirely by herself while making very few mistakes. She added that Dana had worked particularly hard recently, so she should actually be happy and excited about having new coworkers joining the office. Adam simply accepted her explanation without saying anything further. Seeing his serious reaction, Harper suddenly laughed before admitting that she had only been joking. She told him there was no reason for him to remain so serious all the time because people were supposed to laugh whenever someone made a joke. She then explained that Dana had struggled only during the beginning because Kim had been far too busy to properly train and guide her. Now, however, Dana had improved tremendously compared to before. According to Harper, all Dana had ever needed was someone willing to show her the ropes and guide her through the work properly. She advised Adam to stop worrying so much about Dana because she was doing just fine now, and instead focus his attention on his own responsibilities. After saying that, Harper's expression softened slightly as she asked whether he had managed to get home safely the previous night. She admitted that she had been a little worried about him because it had been the very first time the 2 of them had gone out drinking together, and she wanted to make sure that everything had been all right after they had parted ways. Harper Song remarked to Adam that she had never seen him smiling like that before, so she had assumed that the alcohol must have messed up his head. Adam silently thought that it was very unlike Harper to bring up topics that had nothing to do with work. Seeing her casually chatting with him and even making jokes felt so unfamiliar that it made him wonder whether she actually enjoyed talking to him outside of work. Harper then continued by telling him not to claim that he could not remember anything because his usually expressionless face had suddenly softened, and he had spent the entire evening smiling like a fool. Adam replied that he genuinely had no memory of behaving like that at all. He then asked whether she could really imagine him making such an expression. Before either of them could continue the conversation any further, Dana Jin suddenly approached them from behind, startling both Adam and Harper and causing the conversation to end immediately. Afterward, Adam returned to his office cubicle and resumed working on his assignments. However, despite trying to focus on his work, his thoughts kept drifting back to what had just happened. He wondered whether Dana might have overheard part of the conversation between him and Harper earlier. He remembered how she had been unusually quiet before they had all returned to their desks, but he kept telling himself that she probably had not overheard anything. Even so, he found himself wanting to ask her about it. Unfortunately, he knew that doing so would only force him to admit that there was something unusual going on between him and Harper, something that he himself did not even know how to explain. He continued thinking that the entire situation had only happened because of his previous appointment with Harper. Perhaps, from Dana's point of view, that alone was enough to make her feel upset. Adam had always believed that Dana only spent time with him because of their competitive one-on-one fights together, and nothing more than that. However, recently, he had begun to feel that the expressions on her face suggested something completely different. It almost seemed as though she genuinely wanted something from him, yet he could not understand what it was. As he continued thinking about it, he suddenly remembered the words Dana had once said to him, promising that she would always be available whenever he needed her. Remembering that conversation made him hesitate for a moment, before finally asking whether she would like to have lunch together after work. Dana immediately agreed without showing the slightest hesitation. Once work was over, however, instead of simply going out for lunch, the two of them ended up going to the motel once again for a close combat battle. They spent quite some time completing their usual competitive fight, and after finally finishing the training, Dana stepped outside to buy some drinks for both of them. Once she returned with the drinks, the two of them sat down together. Adam suggested that they should probably have a proper conversation since they finally had some time alone. Dana replied that they could simply talk while drinking. As Adam quietly watched her, he noticed that she had rushed outside earlier without even bothering to straighten her clothes properly. Despite that, she still wanted to spend more time drinking with him. What surprised him even more was that she had brought an extra set of clothes with her in her bag, as though she had already planned everything in advance. He found himself wondering about it because, in his mind, it was not even such a difficult question to ask. Looking at the table, he noticed the number of beer cans she had bought and remarked that she had brought quite a lot of beer. Dana casually replied that she had assumed people normally drank that much. Adam smiled awkwardly before replying that he certainly did not drink that much. Dana admitted that she did not either and explained that she usually only drank while watching movies at home during weekends. Adam then shared that whenever he drank with other people, he usually stopped after only 1 or 2 glasses. He added that he rarely drank at home because he still lived with his parents. Dana seemed surprised upon hearing that and admitted that she had not known he still lived with them. Curious about his lifestyle, she asked him what he usually did after work. Adam explained that he normally rested at home or watched movies. He also mentioned that he was not particularly picky about genres because, for him, as long as the story was interesting, he was willing to watch anything. As soon as the conversation shifted toward movies, Dana became much more talkative than before and started asking him about the latest films he had watched. Adam quietly observed that she seemed completely different while talking about something she genuinely enjoyed. She was speaking much more than usual, making it obvious that movies were one of her favorite topics. After they had talked for quite a while, Dana asked whether he would like to continue having friendly battles with her in the future. Adam agreed without refusing. Dana then happily suggested that they could continue doing some competitive matches whenever they wanted. The following morning, both Adam and Dana arrived at the office as usual and sat beside each other while quietly working on their assignments. Although they appeared completely focused on their work, Adam suddenly received a message from Dana on his phone. In the message, she asked whether he had reached home safely the previous night. She then added that it would have been nice if they had not needed to come to work that day because they would have been able to spend even more time together. Before Adam could even think of replying, Harper suddenly called everyone's attention and announced that she wanted to introduce the 2 new employees who would be joining their department that day. She introduced them as Nala Yoon and Lanny Ham. The 2 newcomers politely introduced themselves to everyone in the department with cheerful smiles. Watching them, Dana quietly commented that they were both overflowing with energy and were completely different from how the 2 of them had been on their own first day at work. Adam silently agreed with her observation, thinking that she was absolutely right because he had been extremely nervous on his own first day at the company. He then remarked that, since they were talking about it, they would now have the responsibility of showing the newcomers the ropes. Adam explained that their supervisor apparently already had far too much work to handle, so the responsibility had been delegated to the two of them. Hearing that, Dana immediately looked worried and admitted that she did not think she would be able to do it. She confessed that she could barely manage her own work as it was and did not think she would even be able to hold a proper conversation with the new recruits. Adam tried to reassure her by explaining that she did not need to pressure herself. He suggested that she could simply allow the newcomers to observe how she worked because she was already more than capable of handling her own responsibilities, and they would naturally learn from watching her. Meanwhile, Harper led the two newcomers to their desks and encouraged them to greet every member of the team. Both Nala and Lanny enthusiastically introduced themselves to everyone they met, greeting each person with bright smiles and endless energy. Watching the scene, Adam silently thought that Lanny was practically a bundle of energy, and he could already imagine Dana having an incredibly difficult time dealing with someone so lively and outgoing. As for himself, he had been assigned to guide Nala. She politely approached him, introduced herself, and greeted him with a calm smile. Adam quietly observed that she appeared calm, polite, reasonable, and easy to get along with. From his first impression alone, he felt that she would probably be very easy to work with. Throughout the rest of the day, he patiently sat beside Nala and carefully explained each part of her responsibilities, making sure she understood everything before moving on to the next task. By the time evening arrived, they had finally finished going through everything that had been planned for the day. Adam informed her that they would stop there for now because the remaining tasks could be covered the following day. To his surprise, Nala suddenly asked whether he already had any plans for the upcoming weekend. The unexpected personal question caught him completely off guard. Remaining professional, Adam politely replied that he preferred not to discuss personal matters while they were at work. He then advised her to return to her desk and carefully review everything he had taught her during the day, assuring her that he would explain the remaining work to her tomorrow. Not long afterward, Nala approached Harper and respectfully addressed her as team leader. She suggested that everyone should have a team dinner after work so that all the members, especially the newcomers, could get to know one another better and break the ice. Much to Adam's surprise, Harper agreed almost immediately, without showing any hesitation. Adam silently thought that she had accepted the suggestion far too quickly, because Harper normally disliked company dinners and usually avoided such gatherings whenever possible. As he continued watching the situation unfold, he also found himself thinking that Nala seemed eager to continue talking with him after work, almost as though she believed that spending more time with him outside working hours would not be any inconvenience for him at all. The office team dinner was taking place at a pub, and the atmosphere was lively as all of the colleagues sat together, eating, drinking, and chatting with one another. Different conversations were taking place at every table. One of the employees brought up an old incident, mentioning that around 6 months earlier, Kim had suddenly applied for a paid leave without giving any prior notice, and the leave had lasted for an entire week. He commented that everyone had assumed something terrible must have happened because it had been so unexpected. Another colleague joined the conversation and continued discussing the same topic with him. Meanwhile, Adam sat quietly among them, barely paying attention to what everyone else was talking about because his thoughts were occupied by something completely different. He found himself thinking that he simply could not figure out what Nala Yoon's real intentions were. He had been under the impression that she had suggested this team dinner because she wanted an opportunity to talk to him. Yet ever since everyone had arrived at the pub, she had not spoken a single word to him. He continued wondering whether everyone else had absolutely no idea that he was actually the reason she had suggested the team dinner in the first place. They were probably assuming that she was simply another energetic new recruit who wanted to get along with everyone. However, Adam could not convince himself that things were really that simple. Nala was not the only one whose behavior felt strange to him. Harper agreeing to attend the team dinner was just as unusual. Normally, she would have openly expressed her irritation at the very suggestion of a company gathering, yet this time she had accepted it almost immediately without any complaints at all. Adam simply could not understand why she had agreed so easily. He even found himself wondering whether Nala somehow had that much influence over Harper. After thinking about it for a while, he told himself that perhaps he should simply stop overthinking everything because none of it was making any sense. While he was lost in his thoughts, Dana, who had been sitting beside him the entire time, gently got his attention and asked him about his plans for the weekend. She reminded him about the movie she had mentioned to him the last time they had talked and explained that it had finally been released. She excitedly added that it was the third movie in the series and suggested that they should go and watch it together because it would definitely be a lot of fun. Listening to her, Adam quietly thought that Dana was probably the easiest person to understand because her priorities were always written all over her face. Whenever she became interested in something, she talked about it without trying to hide her excitement. Even so, Adam looked around at everyone else before replying that he did not think the team dinner was the best place to discuss those kinds of plans. Before Dana could respond, Lanny suddenly joined their conversation out of nowhere and asked whether they were talking about the newly released movie. Both Adam and Dana were startled by her sudden interruption. Adam confirmed that they were indeed talking about that movie and explained that Dana had merely been asking whether he knew anyone who might be interested in going to watch it with her. Upon hearing that, Lanny's eyes widened in surprise. She immediately asked whether the two of them were planning to watch the movie together and then bluntly questioned whether they were actually dating each other. The unexpected question caused an awkward silence to fall over the table. At that very moment, Harper turned toward Lanny and calmly but firmly told her that she should refrain from asking such personal questions because they were no longer in school and she needed to learn to respect other people's privacy. Realizing that she had crossed a line, Lanny immediately began apologizing to Adam over and over again. Adam, however, smiled politely and assured her that everything was fine. He told her that there was no reason for her to feel so discouraged because everyone made mistakes from time to time. The important thing was to learn from those mistakes and avoid repeating them in the future. As Adam watched Harper's reaction, he silently thought that she did not seem nearly as surprised by Lanny's question as he had expected. He had honestly believed that Harper would have been caught completely off guard by such an assumption. At the same time, he also felt relieved that Lanny had not continued asking more personal questions after that. Even though Adam had already forgiven her, Lanny continued apologizing repeatedly while drinking more and more alcohol. Before long, she had drunk so much that she eventually fell asleep right there at the table. After spending some more time at the gathering, Adam excused himself and went to the restroom. As he washed his hands, he quietly reflected on everything that had happened throughout the evening. He thought that he had probably drunk more alcohol than he should have. At the same time, he felt that Dana had been far too careless during their earlier conversation. The way she had spoken could have easily caused everyone to misunderstand their relationship and assume that they were dating. Adam blamed himself for not warning her beforehand to be more careful about what she said in front of their coworkers before they had arrived at the pub. While he was still thinking about it, Harper suddenly entered the restroom. She approached him and calmly asked about everything that had happened between him and Dana earlier. She then directly asked whether there was any truth behind the assumption that the two of them were dating. Adam immediately explained that there was nothing special going on between them. He clarified that Dana had only been telling him about a movie she wanted to watch, and their conversation had been completely innocent. Harper listened before commenting that she found the situation rather strange, because she had always believed that Adam preferred avoiding casual conversations with his coworkers whenever possible. She then asked whether his recent behavior was simply because they had both been drinking or whether there was some other reason behind it. Adam admitted that he and Dana had occasionally talked briefly after work, but nothing more than that. Harper then advised him that he should be careful not to say or do anything that might create unnecessary problems at the workplace. She informed him that she had already told everyone that it was about time to leave, and added that she would come out in a moment before leaving the restroom. After returning to the others, Harper announced that anyone who wanted to continue drinking and go for a second round was free to do so, but she would not be joining them because there were people waiting for her at home. Soon afterward, everyone began leaving the pub, one after another. Dana and Lanny were already standing outside, preparing to head home. The group exchanged their goodbyes before gradually going their separate ways. Nala, however, remained standing near Adam and Harper. She commented that the evening had ended much more quickly than she had expected and admitted that she still wanted to go for another round of drinks. Adam and Harper simply continued walking without responding to her suggestion. As Adam walked away, he silently thought that after drinking so much already, he was honestly surprised that Nala still had enough energy to continue drinking. Just as Adam believed the evening was finally over, Nala suddenly rushed up from behind and grabbed hold of his arm. Smiling confidently, she assured him that she was still completely sober and asked him to accompany her for another round of drinks. Adam politely refused and explained that they all had work the following day and that he needed to head home. Instead of letting him go, Nala suddenly asked him a completely unexpected question. She wanted to know whether he was already seeing someone. Adam immediately became flustered and reminded her that Miss Song had only moments ago told everyone not to ask such personal questions. He quickly added that it had already been made perfectly clear that Dana and he were not dating. Nala calmly shook her head and explained that she had not been talking about Dana at all. She then casually remarked that she had actually been wondering whether the woman Adam was seeing was Harper Song. The unexpected accusation struck Adam like a bolt from the blue. He was left completely speechless, and for a long moment, he simply stood there, frozen in place, unable to respond. Nala asked Adam whether his relationship with Harper was supposed to be a secret. She explained that she had noticed how unusually attentive Harper had been toward him throughout the dinner at the pub, mentioning that Harper had been paying far more attention to him than to anyone else. Because of that, she had naturally started wondering if there was something going on between the two of them. She assured him that he did not need to worry because she knew how to keep a secret, adding that whatever she had noticed would remain between them and that his secret was completely safe with her. Adam immediately told her that she really needed to stop teasing him. He explained that he had already asked her to stop prying into his personal life because her constant assumptions and questions were making him feel extremely uncomfortable, and he believed she should have understood that by now. Hearing the seriousness in his voice, Nala immediately apologized. She explained that she had never intended to make him uncomfortable in any way, and insisted that she had only been trying to know him a little better. She clarified that she had not meant any harm and had only been curious. Adam accepted her apology without saying much more. As he prepared to leave, he simply asked her to be more careful about crossing personal boundaries in the future before quietly walking away. Over the next week, Adam gradually noticed that Nala had completely changed the way she behaved around him. One day, while he was sitting in his cabin focusing on his work, Nala, who was still working under his supervision, approached him only because she needed help with a work-related matter. She politely asked him about the proper procedure after realizing that she might have accidentally sent the wrong file. Adam calmly explained the correct process before returning his attention to his work. As he watched her quietly return to her desk without saying anything unnecessary, he found himself thinking that she had remained completely professional throughout the entire week. Not once had she brought up anything personal or attempted to tease him again. His thoughts drifted back to the conversation they had shared after the gathering at the pub, and he reflected that perhaps he should never have allowed himself to be bothered by such unnecessary personal matters in the workplace. Even if Nala had genuinely been telling the truth about simply wanting to know him better, he still believed that becoming so personal with someone at work was inappropriate. She should never have assumed that it was acceptable to pry into his private life, regardless of her intentions. However, as he continued working, he realized that none of it really mattered anymore, because she had completely stopped bothering him. Since she had chosen to maintain a professional distance, there was nothing left for him to be concerned about. At the same time, he also realized that his weekly outings with Harper had recently become less frequent, leaving him with much more free time than he usually had. Just as he was thinking about that, Lanny suddenly walked over to his desk and asked whether he was free during the upcoming weekend. Adam answered without hesitation that he was not available. Lanny then explained that she had actually wanted to invite him out for a cup of coffee. Before Adam could respond further, Dana stepped in and explained that Lanny simply wanted an opportunity to apologize for everything that had happened the last time they had met. Adam replied that he did not think it would be appropriate for them to leave together during working hours. To his complete surprise, Harper happened to overhear the conversation and casually told them that they could go if they wanted because she had no objections to it. Her unexpected approval surprised Adam even more because he had fully expected her to reject the idea immediately. Since Harper herself had given permission, Adam no longer had any reason to refuse. A short while later, Adam, Dana, and Lanny went out together for coffee, while Nala also joined them. The four of them sat together, enjoying their drinks while casually talking about different things. As Adam quietly observed everyone, he found himself thinking that Dana and Lanny were getting along surprisingly well. He had honestly expected Dana to struggle while interacting with Lanny after everything that had happened between them before, yet the two of them were chatting comfortably as if there had never been any awkwardness between them. During their conversation, Lanny sincerely thanked Adam once again. She explained that she had already wanted to thank him for paying for everyone's drinks the previous time because, in her opinion, she should have been the one paying instead. She then apologized once again for making so many false assumptions about him back at the pub and admitted that she had judged the situation far too quickly without actually knowing the truth. Before Adam could respond, Nala commented that she did not think Lanny could really be blamed for making those assumptions because, even now, it still looked as though there was something going on between Adam and Dana. She admitted that she honestly believed the two of them were dating because of how naturally they interacted with each other. She quickly clarified that she was not trying to offend anyone and explained that she had only wanted to say that she genuinely thought both of them were amazing people. After saying that, Nala turned toward Dana and remarked that Dana seemed to be the only person in the office who was actually close to Adam. She explained that Adam was not exactly known for being the most approachable or welcoming person at work, so it was surprising to see how comfortably Dana interacted with him. Dana immediately disagreed with that statement. She insisted that Adam was actually friendly toward everyone, and that many people misunderstood him because he was naturally quiet. She further explained that not only was he exceptionally good at his job, but he also never hesitated to help his coworkers whenever they needed assistance. According to Dana, Adam was much kinder than most people realized. Hearing that explanation, Nala thoughtfully replied that perhaps she was the only person whom Adam treated differently. As Adam listened to the conversation unfold, he silently thought to himself that everything was becoming increasingly awkward. He wished the topic would change because he had absolutely no idea how the conversation had ended up focusing entirely on him. Completely unaware of his growing discomfort, Nala looked back at Dana and asked her what the secret was behind becoming so close to Adam. Dana smiled before casually explaining that there was not really any secret at all. She simply said that they often went out drinking together after work, and over time they had naturally become close through those casual gatherings. After the workday finally came to an end, all four of them decided to continue spending time together by going out for a drinking session. As the evening went on, Dana and Lanny gradually drank much more than everyone else. Eventually, both of them became completely drunk and passed out at the table, leaving only Adam and Nala still awake. With Dana and Lanny no longer conscious, the lively atmosphere gradually became much quieter, and Adam and Nala simply remained seated across from each other, continuing to drink together in silence as the night carried on. Adam was noticeably more intoxicated than he had realized. As he looked across the table at Nala, he found himself thinking that he had already noticed during the company dinner that she could hold her alcohol surprisingly well. He had honestly never expected her to be capable of drinking this much. Because he had unconsciously tried to keep pace with her throughout the evening, he had ended up drinking far more than he normally would. His body felt incredibly heavy, and despite trying to stay awake for just a little longer, he gradually felt himself losing consciousness until he finally passed out. After what felt like only a brief moment, Adam slowly regained consciousness. He slowly opened his eyes while trying to gather his thoughts. Everything around him looked unfamiliar. As his vision gradually became clearer, he immediately realized that he was no longer at the restaurant. Instead, he found himself lying inside a hotel room. The realization immediately shocked him. He slowly sat up while looking around the room with complete confusion. Eventually, he gave up trying to figure it out. Since his mind was still clouded by the alcohol, he decided that it would be better to think about everything the following day after getting some proper. He realized that he was not alone in the room. There was another girl sleeping there as well. Still feeling half asleep and unable to think clearly, Adam naturally assumed that the person lying beside him was Dana. He quietly thought that Dana must have been the one who had brought him to the hotel, because there probably had not been anyone else who could have taken care of him after he passed out. As that thought crossed his mind, he could not help reflecting on how strange everything had become over the past several weeks. Not very long ago, Dana had simply been an annoying coworker whom he constantly found himself arguing with. At that time, he never would have imagined that they would eventually become this close. Somehow, everything had gradually started changing after their first date. His thoughts drifted back to that day, and he clearly remembered the shock he had felt when he saw Dana wearing such an unusual yet incredibly beautiful outfit. It had completely exceeded his expectations. At the same time, his weekly outings with Harper had become much less stressful than they used to be. Harper no longer relied on him nearly as much for help with her work, allowing him to relax a little more whenever they spent time together. On top of that, he and Dana somehow always ended up being assigned as partners during their private one-on-one moment. It almost felt as though fate kept pairing them together. While those thoughts continued running through his mind, he looked toward the girl lying peacefully on the bed. Her face was turned away from him, making it impossible for him to see who she actually was. Still believing that it was Dana, Adam softly asked whether she was asleep before quietly asking her to turn around. As soon as the girl slowly turned over and faced him, Adam immediately froze. His eyes widened with complete disbelief. The person lying there was not Dana at all. It was Nala. For several seconds, he simply stared at her in complete shock, unable to process what he was seeing. By that point, Nala had already woken up and immediately noticed the embarrassed expression on his face. Seeing how uncomfortable he looked, she calmly smiled before telling him that it was completely understandable that he had mistaken her for Dana. She explained that she was actually the one who had encouraged him to drink that much during the evening, so she could understand why he was still confused after waking up. Hearing that only made Adam feel even more embarrassed. He silently blamed himself for the entire misunderstanding. Deep inside, he thought that he had already been concerned about Nala because of the way she constantly made questionable advances and teased him whenever she had the opportunity. However, now she had an even more embarrassing misunderstanding to hold over him. He tried to comfort himself by thinking that he had been heavily intoxicated, so it was understandable that he had failed to notice the difference in clothing. Even so, he could not excuse himself completely. He thought that no matter how drunk he had been, he should have at least looked at her face before assuming that she was Dana. Unable to ignore the awkwardness any longer, Adam sincerely apologized to Nala. He admitted that he should never have assumed who she was without checking first. He explained that he had acted carelessly and acknowledged that his behavior had been inappropriate. He told her that if his misunderstanding had made her uncomfortable in any way, he was willing to take full responsibility for his actions. Nala quietly listened to everything he had to say before calmly replying that what she had really wanted to know was what his intentions had been at that moment. Her question immediately caught Adam off guard because he had not expected her to ask something like that. Feeling even more guilty than before, he honestly replied that if there was anything she wanted him to do in order to make up for the misunderstanding, he would do it without complaining. After hearing his answer, Nala looked at him for a moment, before suddenly asking whether she could ask him to become her boyfriend. The unexpected question completely stunned Adam. Seeing his priceless reaction, Nala could not help smiling before quickly explaining that she had only been joking. She assured him that she already knew he was dating Harper and had never actually expected him to accept such a request. Before he could recover from the shock of her joke, Nala smoothly changed the subject. She casually asked whether it was true that he and Dana were partners for a 1v1 gaming match. She confidently mentioned that she already knew about that as well. Noticing his reaction, Nala admitted that he had gradually become much more fascinating than she had initially imagined. When she first met him, she had assumed he was someone who disliked socializing and had absolutely no interest in dating or exercising with other people. However, the more she learned about him, the more surprised she became. She had discovered that he was apparently dating Harper while regularly participating in some boxing sessions alongside Dana. She admitted that learning those unexpected things about him had made him seem even more interesting in her eyes. Finally, she added that if he did not mind, she would also like him to allow her to join him for that friendly battle as well. Adam was thinking that perhaps Nala wanted to start everything over and continue their relationship from the point where they had previously left it. As those thoughts crossed his mind, she showed him the helmet she had brought along and explained that she always carried one with her for safety purposes because she believed it was important to stay protected during training. After saying that, she mentioned that she thought it was finally time for them to begin their competitive 1v1 battle. Hearing those words caused Adam to recall every conversation he had previously shared with her, and one memory after another flashed through his mind. Without saying anything else, both of them headed toward the motel, where they began training together. Once their session was over, both of them prepared to leave the motel. As they walked out together, Adam was thinking that, in the end, he had failed to learn anything new about her despite spending so much time together. He also found himself feeling surprised that she had chosen such an expensive place to stay for the night. At the same time, he thought that it was obvious the motel was a rather upscale place, making him wonder why she had selected it so casually. While they were leaving, Nala asked him how he had found the boxing rounds and wanted to know about his overall experience. She commented that she had honestly not expected him to possess such impressive physical strength, especially considering how drunk he had been before they started. She added that despite everything, they had ended up spending quite a good amount of time together during the battle. Adam, however, was thinking that she was saying all of that as though it had been his choice, even though she had practically forced him into participating in the training. Afterward, she asked whether he would like to join her again the next time she trained. She went on to explain that she felt it would be a waste to end things there from her side because she had finally managed to find a great boxing round partner. She further explained that it was extremely difficult to find someone who could keep up with her throughout such a one-on-one gaming match, which was exactly why she did not want their training together to end so quickly. Adam replied that he could not trust someone who constantly liked to pry into other people's personal lives while refusing to reveal anything meaningful about herself. He continued by saying that he had absolutely no interest in continuing any more boxing matches with her and that pursuing such a relationship would only end up being a complete waste. Even after hearing his rejection, she calmly asked whether he would be free the next time they met. She then unexpectedly suggested that the two of them could even go on a date afterward, a proposal that caught Adam completely off guard and left him staring at her in surprise. She continued by saying that, according to his own words, he should have no objection to such an arrangement if they genuinely wanted to get to know each other better. She believed that spending time together on a proper date would be a much better way for both of them to understand one another. She then playfully remarked that perhaps he was simply afraid that he might end up developing feelings for her if they spent more time together. She confidently added that she had no such concerns regarding him, because she was not worried about anything of that sort happening. She also mentioned that since his work schedule was probably much busier than hers, she would leave the responsibility of choosing the date entirely to him. After saying everything she wanted to say, she wished him a pleasant weekend before walking away. As Adam watched her leave, he could not help thinking that she was truly a strange and unpredictable woman whose behavior was impossible to understand. After that, while spending time with Harper Song, Adam decided to ask her about Nala because he wanted to know more about her background. Harper explained that Nala was actually the daughter of the executive director of the company. Hearing that revelation, left Adam completely stunned because it was the last thing he had expected to hear. Harper further explained that the director had apparently arranged a position for Nala within the company because, after graduating from college, she had been interested only in enjoying herself and having fun rather than seriously thinking about her future career. After explaining that, Harper asked Adam whether knowing that information would be a problem for him. Adam replied that it would not be a problem at all. Harper then asked whether he was feeling intimidated by Nala because of her family background before advising him to look after her properly. She told him to treat Nala exactly the same way he would treat any other employee, and added that she believed Nala would do just fine as long as she received a little guidance and proper instruction from him. Harper then added that the real problem was actually Lanny, a statement that surprised Adam once again because he had not been expecting her to suddenly bring up Lanny in the conversation. While they were at work, Adam happened to be standing near the vending machine when Lanny suddenly came running around the corner and accidentally bumped into him, causing both of them to lose their balance and fall onto the floor. As soon as she realized what had happened, Lanny immediately began apologizing over and over again. She explained that she should never have been running when there had not even been anything urgent that required her to hurry in the first place. Adam was thinking that he had already told her that everything was perfectly fine, yet she continued apologizing as though she had caused a major accident. He felt that she was greatly exaggerating the entire situation. At the same time, he was also thinking that Dana seemed to be having a much more difficult time than he had originally expected. Because of Lanny's work performance and the way she behaved around the office, it was difficult for him to figure out what the actual problem was. He then recalled Harper's advice, remembering that Harper had told him to focus on his own work from then onward. However, Harper had also asked him to help Lanny whenever necessary, leaving him uncertain about how he should balance both responsibilities. With that thought in mind, Adam walked over and stood in front of Lanny before asking her how she was finding her work experience at the company so far. Lanny simply replied that everything had been great. Before Adam could ask anything else, she hurriedly excused herself, explaining that she needed to get back to work immediately, and then she quickly ran away. Watching her leave, Adam was thinking that perhaps she genuinely liked working there. He also felt that he had been so caught off guard by her unexpectedly positive answer that he had failed to notice anything unusual about her. She had seemed incredibly energetic and highly motivated, making him wonder whether that very energy was what had been giving Dana such a difficult time at work. He then thought that perhaps he should ask Dana about it later because she might know what was really going on. As Adam continued walking through the office, he eventually passed by the cafeteria, where he noticed Dana sitting alone with her head resting on the table, as though she had completely run out of energy. Feeling concerned, he bought her a drink and placed it in front of her. The unexpected gesture surprised Dana, and she immediately looked up at him. Adam asked why she was sitting there alone, and Dana explained that she had simply been taking a short break to rest. Adam then asked whether everything had been all right before asking if she had been overwhelmed by her workload lately. Dana shook her head and explained that it had nothing to do with work. Adam realized that she had been acting somewhat differently for a while, which made him even more curious. Dana then admitted that the real reason had been that she had been seeing him much less often than before. She explained that although they still saw each other at work every day, it was completely different from actually spending time together. She reminded him that he had talked about taking her on a date the previous weekend, but had never mentioned it again afterward. Because of that, she had been unable to stop thinking about it, and it had affected her ability to focus properly on her work. Hearing that reminded Adam that he really had promised her a date. He immediately felt guilty for forgetting about it. He sincerely apologized, admitting that he had completely forgotten to follow up after asking whether she would be free. He explained that he had never expected training a new employee to become so demanding that it would completely overwhelm his daily life and make him forget about his promise. Wanting to make up for it, he told Dana that, as an apology, he would do whatever she wanted. Dana smiled before telling him that what she wanted was to perform a competitive one-on-one fight together with him. Although Adam hesitated for a brief moment, he eventually agreed to her request. The two of them then headed toward the restroom to carry out their boxing training. However, while they were there, they were suddenly startled by the arrival of Lanny and Nala. Not wanting to be discovered, Adam and Dana quickly hid themselves inside one of the bathroom stalls and remained completely silent. From behind the wall, they unintentionally overheard the conversation taking place between the two women. Nala immediately began complaining that she was incredibly sleepy and completely exhausted. Curious, Lanny asked her what had happened. Nala explained that her father and one of his close friends had made her drink with them over the weekend to celebrate her getting a job. She jokingly added that she would have been even happier to spend another entire year enjoying herself if her father had not decided to cut off her allowance. As Adam quietly listened from inside the stall, he was thinking that perhaps the two of them were actually friends. Nala then told Lanny that she was genuinely happy that Lanny was also working at the same company, because she would have hated it if Lanny had not been there with her. Lanny modestly replied that she believed Nala would have been perfectly fine even without her, because Nala had never seemed to have any trouble getting along with the people around her. Nala laughed before saying that it was true that the people at the company were different from Lanny, and that was probably the reason why everything felt different. Afterward, Nala asked whether something was wrong because Lanny had been looking rather down lately. Listening carefully, Adam was thinking that Nala was right. Compared to when Lanny had first joined the company, she had become much quieter, making him wonder whether she was secretly having difficulties adjusting to work. Lanny then explained that she had simply been feeling tired because of her boxing practice. She mentioned that she had gone to the gym over the weekend. Nala sounded surprised and asked whether she had really gone to the gym during the weekend as well. She pointed out that Lanny already worked out after work on weekdays and asked whether maintaining such a schedule was not extremely exhausting. Lanny calmly replied that it was not really a problem because she usually had nothing else to do. She admitted that whenever she stayed at home, she tended to overthink many things, so working out helped clear her mind and stopped her from thinking about anything else. After hearing that, Nala suggested that she should reduce her private one-on-one match to only 3 times a week, instead of exercising so often. As Adam quietly listened to everything from behind the wall, he was thinking that perhaps the two of them were not actually close enough to tell each other everything that was really going on. At the same time, he reminded himself that before worrying about anyone else, he first needed to deal with Dana and the promise that he had made to her. After completing their competitive one-on-one fight, Adam and Dana returned to their cubicle. As soon as they settled down, Adam explained that she had probably not heard the news because she had been on the rooftop during that time. He went on to tell her that maintenance workers were carrying out repairs on the overflow section to fix a leak, and because of that, everyone had been sent home early for the day. Hearing that left Dana completely surprised. Adam then pointed out that this was the reason the office had become so quiet and empty. He admitted that he had only kept the information from her because he had wanted to tell her at the right moment, thinking it would make her happy. He apologized for not informing her sooner and hoped she would not be upset with him for waiting until then to tell her the news. Upon hearing his explanation, Dana suddenly became emotional and tears began filling her eyes. She admitted that the news was actually a huge relief for her because she had been worried the entire time that the two of them would get caught. She confessed that she had been afraid they would never get the chance to complete their friendly battle. Knowing that the office had already emptied out had lifted a great weight off her shoulders. Seeing her reaction, Adam gently asked whether she would like to have lunch with him, adding that it would be his treat. Dana happily agreed without any hesitation. After finishing their work, the two of them left the office together and headed out for lunch. While standing on the street waiting for Dana to arrive, Adam quietly reflected that he could not even get proper rest during the week because of his date with Nala. Even though the week had been exhausting, he comforted himself by thinking that at least he would finally be able to get some proper rest the following week. A few moments later, Dana arrived, and the two of them walked into a nearby restaurant together before sitting down and beginning their lunch. As they were eating, Dana brought up the topic of their relationship. She explained that she did not want anyone else at work to find out about the two of them and reminded Adam that they had both agreed to keep their relationship a secret. Adam responded by pointing out that she was the very person who was always eager to carry out their battle sessions while they were still at work. Hearing her say that made him feel slightly puzzled. In his mind, he found her behavior somewhat contradictory. She wanted to spend time with him and even insisted on training together in the workplace. Yet, at the same time, she was afraid that someone might discover their relationship. He could not help thinking that she was extremely difficult to understand in that particular regard, and no matter how much he thought about it, he simply could not make complete sense of her action. When the weekend finally arrived, Adam went to meet Nala as they had planned. However, the moment he arrived, he was surprised to see that Lanny was there as well. The unexpected sight immediately confused him, and he asked if he could receive an explanation about why Lanny had come along. Instead of answering him immediately, Nala casually suggested that they grab a cup of coffee first, and assured him that she would explain everything afterward. Once they had settled down with their drinks, Nala finally explained the entire situation to him. As Adam listened to her explanation, he could not stop thinking that she had plenty of opportunities to tell him beforehand that she intended to bring Lanny with her. He found it strange that she had waited until they met in person before mentioning something so important. Looking over at Lanny, he noticed how uncomfortable she appeared. She did not look like someone who had willingly wanted to come along, which only made the situation seem even stranger to him. Adam could not understand why Nala had insisted on bringing her in the first place. As more thoughts crossed his mind, he even wondered whether Nala intended to tell Lanny everything that had been happening between the two of them. That possibility honestly would not have surprised him. Even if Nala had no intention of revealing the truth, the fact remained that Lanny had still witnessed the two of them spending time together on what was obviously a date, and that alone was enough to make him feel uneasy. A moment later, Lanny apologized for the situation and explained that she had told Nala she wanted to become closer to the people at work and get along with everyone better. She continued by saying that she had only agreed to come because Nala had offered to help her choose gifts for their coworkers at the office. After listening to her explanation, Adam replied that he understood the situation. Even though he accepted her explanation, he could not stop thinking that Nala had simply come up with an excuse. The entire situation still felt unusual to him because, in his opinion, there would never have been any need to make up such an explanation if Nala had not decided to bring Lanny along in the first place. After looking at both of them for a moment, Adam suggested that it would probably be better if the two of them went shopping without him. He explained that they would most likely feel more comfortable if he was not accompanying them. However, Lanny immediately disagreed and insisted that his help would actually make things much easier. Nala agreed with her and pointed out that Adam knew everyone at the office much better than either of them did.